What's up, YouTubers? Today we're going to talk about the Spyderco Sage 5 Lightweight. And we're going to try to answer the question that Metal Complex posed for himself and came to the conclusion that, is this the very best EDC knife made? And for him, it was yes. I'll give some of my thoughts and opinions on that, and that'll be at the end. For now, I suggest, though, if you're interested in this, check out Smoky Mountain Knife Works if you want to get right to it, smkw.com. They do have these available in the lightweight version. This has been very difficult to come by, and we'll talk about that as one of the cons. There is also the carbon fiber overlay on G10. They call it the Peel Ply. It's for $164. It's available at KnifeWorks and Knife Joy as of the time of this. So if you want to just jump on over, in fact, I'll go ahead and link those below, so you can just click right on over there. But let's jump into this knife. This knife weighs in at 2.9 ounces. It's made of S30V steel blade, and it is a 3 inches long. So it's going to be legal in just about every place in the United States that I'm aware of. It does cost $123 for the fiber reinforced nylon version, which kind of looks two-toned. We'll see if that shows up on video. Yeah, you can kind of see that, but it has to do with the bidirectionality. It actually has barbing that goes this way and then barbing that goes this way, and it basically will prevent it from really rocking in either direction. So this knife is very solid as far as that goes, and it doesn't really feel that cheap, so that's kind of a good thing. I bought this knife on February 28th because that was the day that the series ended, and again, Metal Complex basically said this is probably the very best EDC folding knife, not the best knife of any kind, but just overall everyday carry, which one checks the most boxes. And so I'm tending to agree more and more with this one. But yeah, I bought this sometime back in February of 2021, and I just kind of put it away. I was like, oh, it's another Spyderco leaf shape. Hadn't really touched it, but I've been carrying this thing for the last 2 weeks and putting it through all sorts of paces. Let's talk about the blade. This is really a solid EDC steel S30V, and it's easy enough to sharpen, holds a decent edge, reasonably tough, reasonably stainless. So it really is really good everyday carry steel. It has the full flat grind from Spyderco. They do a really great job, and having the taller blade here with that full flat grind, the geometry is really good. I actually have kind of dulled this thing down. I'll go ahead and intercut some things that I cut with it. We're going to do the Spyderco Sage 5 now.
Is he ready? Oh.
The Sage 5, it slices. The Sage 5 has made it through a lot. I did cut a fair number of these very thick zip ties from some packaging, and it did cut nicely. This does a fairly hefty job against a blade, and I was mostly actually at the heel here. And one of the things that I did notice is when I actually went to break down the big box, it was a very big industrial box, it started catching and tearing on these little spots. A couple reasons. One is that it starts to lose a little bit of that super sharp edge, but also this is double thick cardboard. It is double thick, and when I was breaking down the box, you'll notice I was going against the grain on this. That makes a big difference. When you're going to cut down with the grain, but going down through with the grain, it cuts through the double just fine there, really without a problem. So that, not really a problem, but when you're going against the grain, this one definitely lost, just like I said, just a little bit of that super sharp melt through cardboard sort of edge. S30V, not a problem though. And like I said, those zip ties, the thick ones, did a fair number against it. So overall, definitely a good cutter for EDC. Not an industrial use, I'd say. Maybe that's one of those that you'd really consider a Maximet for this particular model. But I also actually just today, even after using it quite a bit, I cut a lot of this nylon stuff and this whole stack. This nylon strapping material, it really does a number on that super sharp edge of a knife. And it handled that really well. It definitely dulled it down a little bit, but still a very workable edge, I should say. Speaking of the blade, the front finger choil is perfect. It has the jimping on it. It also has the backside jimping here. So you're locked into that thing. It's very comfortable and useful. You can go back on the knife a little bit if you need, but really this is kind of the natural position where you're going to find yourself using this particular one. It is fairly thin stock at in between 0.11 and 0.12. You know, my particular micrometer only just goes to 2 decimals, but it was relatively thin blade stock. So that's a good thing right there. So yeah, I already talked about intercutting some of those cutting examples. Let's jump onto the handle here. I already talked about the bidirectional FRN. It just does not feel that cheap. And it doesn't look as cheap either with the you know, really all things considered, they just did a really good job. And we'll talk about probably partly the reason why that came about. The nested steel liners in here are skeletonized. You can kind of see it probably in there. Oh, there's a lot of gunk in there. Yes, I carried this for 2 weeks straight and beat the heck out of it, and it gathered lots of lint. But the steel liners make it for very rigid. You really have to press super hard. This is definitely harder than you would get with just like a G10 only. So in that sense, it's you know, it's got really good steel. The open back construction, I very specifically did not blow this out. I wanted to see how much gunk would get in there and see if it would impact any of the performance. It did not. Actually, it's going to be just like a PM3. So that's a really good thing. Also on the handle, this wire clip is both right side tip-up carry as well as left side tip-up carry. So that's a good thing for left-handers. And actually, I don't mind lanyard holes, but it is not it is not favored on this one. It's just kind of subtly there, and you can go ahead and tie it in it's in a useful position, not overly thick. So I did really appreciate that on the on the handle. On the deployment, as far as it goes, obviously it's extremely Spyderco fidgety. Front side, back side. You can slow roll it. You know, left-handed, obviously this thing works pretty well too. You know, I'm not the greatest thumb flipper left-handed, but it works. You know, it has their typical bushing system and phosphor bronze washers, and it really does deploy fairly well. It has the great compression lock security where you actually have a little piece of metal sandwiched between the stop pin here, if you will, or the back pin and then the blade tang. And so you would literally have to crush that piece of metal. Very, very solid lockup. And actually, I found that this knife was relatively good with gloves. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that here. Not the greatest, the Spyderco knives. You know, the Shaman is a little bit bigger, but you can deploy that. I find that with gloves, the return is where it's not so good. Just kind of squeezing in with gloves on there into this little spot on the compression doesn't do the very best out there. But again, it is okay with it. So the deployment's really, really good. The value on this knife at $123, this is very good to go. The construction is solid. It's you know, actually I'm kind of jumping into the construction here. This was made in the Taichung, Taiwan factory, and I would say that their manufacturing is certainly every bit as good as Golden, in some ways better. So, for example, one of the things that they really cleaned up that I've found was a lot of problem on a lot of the Taichung ones is the sharpness on the Spidey hole here was so often just so sharp that you would literally cut yourself, and you know, it would peel off fingernail. They fixed that. So in terms of the CQI, I don't know if that's part of the CQI of this process, but it's fantastic. It's comfortable, but it gives you just enough friction there to grab it. You almost can't fail this thing. It's really, really good as far as that deployment goes. Going back to the value, you compare this to other Spyderco knives. You know, the one that I had previously most ever carried was the PM3, the standard in G10. That one's like a $145 knife, and this one's like $20 less than that. I feel just about every bit as secure with this. And then actually, even at the tip, I find that this one is, I think, a little bit stronger than the PM3. It's not going to be as sharp and pokey with that kind of cut off blade shape. But, you know, again, overall, great and solid. This thing carries very light and slim in the pocket. You know, it's 2.9 ounces. What can you say about that for a 3-inch blade? You know, the old 1-for-1. And then also it's just really slim. And with this pocket clip, it has a great landing zone there too, so that you're not really tearing. Spyderco does a really good job of that, creating this landing zone for the clip. Did, again, another marvelous job on this one. So I'm really struggling to find a con for the value here on this knife. The construction, everything. After beating on this thing for a couple weeks, perfectly centered. I mean, you can just really, really tough to find any cons. In fact, if there's anything I'll say about the cons of this knife, it's that it's not available enough. I know there's supply chain issues going on around the world, and I'm hoping to goodness that that they come out with more of these, because I know the Sage series, sometimes they'll just do it as their homage series for various deployment types. And this one being the Sage 5, the deployment type that they're really and locking interface is the compression lock that they're really highlighting. But I can't imagine them not producing possibly 10,000 more of these. It is such a good knife. And again, when Metal Complex comes out with something saying that this is the very best of something, it's going to sell out. And I had no idea that it really would, but it basically, you're having a very tough time finding these things. So the cons, really the availability of this knife. I guess you could maybe say it's got the typical ugly leaf shape, or kind of looks like a pelican maybe. But overall, it doesn't have that really super high swoop one, so it is kind of nicer, like the Shaman, if you follow the lines of that. So really, overall, it's just tough to find any problems with this. Again, check out that Metal Complex series, the very best EDC folding knife. And if you are still here, don't forget to smash those thumbs ups and subscribe button. And have a great day for yourselves. Take care now.